types of Americans: those who live in New York and those who wish they could. You got this.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Fabian Levy, and I serve as Deputy Mayor for Communications for the City of New York. I hope everyone who celebrated had a Merry Christmas, and everyone who is celebrating has a Happy Kwanzaa. Again, like Katie said, it's about unity, so we'll remember that. Thank you for joining us again for our weekly in-person media availability. And I'm glad that Mayor Adams, our colleagues, and I have been able to answer your questions and give New Yorkers a better picture of the work our government is doing for the city. So like Mayor Adams likes to say, we're a team here, and it's a team I'm proud to be part of. So joining us today, we have Mayor Eric Adams, Chief of Staff Camille Joseph Warlick, Deputy Mayor for Operations Mira Joshi, Deputy Mayor for Health and Human Services Ann Williams Isom, Deputy Mayor for Strategic Initiatives Anna Almanzar, and Chief Counsel Lisa Zornberg. So without further delay, I'll pass it over to Mayor Adams.
Thanks so much, Fabian. Hard to believe we're on the verge of 2 years, and I know it's hard to imagine, but 2 years ago, the city was in a free fall. Crime was moving in the wrong direction. No one wanted to be on the subway system. COVID had engulfed this entire city. Matter of fact, if you were sitting in this room, you had a mask on for the most part, even if you were allowed to sit in the room because of the new terminology of social distancing. We were dealing with a real employment crisis, housing crisis. People were looking to just flee to New York, anywhere but New York City. But look at this 2 years later. I say it over and over again, crime is down, jobs are up. We recovered more private sector jobs in the history of the city. We managed the financial and fiscal crises and cliffs that we were facing. Even those who monitor how well cities are doing, the bond raters gave us a AA bond rating last year. We had all of our agencies respond appropriately to the crises that we were facing so we could be prepared for the rainy day. We thought we were going to have probably a few showers, but we were hit with a typhoon called the Migrants Asylum Seekers. Managing over 160,000 migrants and asylum seekers, 1.5 the time of Albany. The entire city dropped into our city. The difference in Albany and New York is they were allowed to work. We were not allowed to have those migrants and asylum seekers work. Instead, 10 trips to Washington, D.C., asking and pleading for help. We did not get that help, but we still did the job anyway. And had walked away with real victories and W's, received assistance from Albany to reduce the cost of child care, raise the earned income tax credit. NYCHA, for the first time, got the NYCHA Land Trust. Administrations tried before and they were unsuccessful, but we got it done. Willis Point, so many people attempted to put a shovel in the ground in Willis Point. Deputy Mayor Maria Torres Springer and her team, we got it done. You go down the list and you see what others have tried, from summer youth employments to other areas. We were successful in doing so because we had the right team to do. 24 months later, only 2 years, and we are humming. 11% decrease in homicides, 25% decrease in shootings, 13,000 guns we removed off our street. And what we are really happy about is how we're continuing to invest in people, public safety, and public spaces, reshaping our streets, making it easier for New Yorkers to use. And so we're looking forward to 2024. And, you know, there are many moments in front of us. There's a high level of uncertainty as we continue to navigate these crises that we're facing. Governor Abbott has made it clear he wants to destabilize cities and sending thousands of migrants and asylum seekers here to the city. We have to address. I have to navigate this city out of it. The bottom line is I'm the mayor, and it's my obligation and responsibility to find the solutions, even if we're not getting the help that we deserve from Washington, D.C. And we need more help from our partners in Albany as well as they go into this legislative session. We are for the task. And, you know, GSD is not just 3 letters, it's what we do. And we got stuff done in 2022, 2023. I'm looking forward to 2024 as we continue to press forward. Fabian, I'm going to a few questions.
Great, thank you. Kayla?
2 questions, Mayor. The HPD has announced the new city initiative to build affordable housing in quote-unquote affluent neighborhoods. I'm wondering if you picked your neighborhoods in New York City, specific neighborhoods, when you're driving around in your motorcade where you think to yourself, there should be more affordable housing here, and where would that be?
Yeah, great question. And one of them is what we did, what we pushed hard on, Bruckner, the Bruckner Project. When you do an analysis and you look at Bruckner, the Bruckner Project and where it was located, you had a large number of people who were saying no affordable housing there, and some of them were extremely hostile. But they had little or no affordable housing throughout the years. And there are many areas. I could look at Manhattan. There are parts of Manhattan that I think is ripe for affordable housing to be built. If you take a look on going from 11th Avenue, going all the way over to Park Avenue, and going, in our central business district, there's a great opportunity to reconvert office space. We have 138 square feet of office space that's vacant. That's prime real estate, close to hospitals, close to transportation, close to food, close to employment. It's a real win. We did it in September 11th when we changed Wall Street area. We made it into a live-work community. That is what people are looking for right now. And, I think that what Deputy Mayor Maria Torres Springer is going to do is do an analysis of where we don't have affordable housing. What I find fascinating, I see people demonstrating about we need more housing, and then they demonstrate that don't build it on my block. Can't have it both ways.
My quick follow-up is about what you envision for 2024. Even though you started today with a list of all your accomplishments, it has been discussed that your approval rating is much lower than it was when you took office. If you were to forecast a few months from now, do you predict that your approval rating will be significantly higher? Or are you worried that this is the reality for Eric Adams heading into 2024?
Well, when these polls come out, the mayors call me, previous mayors, and they share a conversation with me of their low points, their high points, what's going on. And many of them are amazed. They said, with the income you're getting, that you are still chalking up W's, They said this is part of the job. Being mayor of the city of New York, people are going to feel their pain. I always make the joke, the guys say, I'm getting divorced, Eric, it's your fault. I am the person that people see. I'm a visible mayor. I'm on the trains, I'm on the streets, I'm in all of these communities, and I'm a visible mayor. And people are angry about the asylum and migrant. I've never seen New Yorkers as angry as they are now about a particular topic that they have all rallied behind. We divide on public safety, we divide on transportation issues, we divide on a lot of issues. But the byproduct of the migrant asylum seekers crisis and the economic impact has hit every New Yorker in places that they feel it. And so what I must do is to continue to manage 161,000 people, and at the same time, I must show New Yorkers how to point that anger in the right direction and turn that anger into energy. And I don't wake up every day looking at the polls. I don't wake up every day worrying about re-election. I don't wake up every day worrying about, what people think of me. I wake up every day that I gotta navigate the city out of this, or it's gonna be long-term impact. And so I'm looking forward to further driving down crime. That's my number one issue I ran on, the prerequisite to prosperity. It's public safety. I'm looking forward to continue to recover our economy and making sure that we can stop this onslaught of anywhere from 4,000 to 2,500 migrants a week. The federal government must stop this because, there's a lot of people on the sideline that talk about this issue. Trust me, they don't want to be in the seat right now. A lot of people saying, all their ideas, what they would do and how they would fix this. They don't want to be here. They are hoping that Eric can fix this and this team can get this done. No one wants this problem. When I was in Washington, The people said to me that met me there, he says, I thank God I'm not you, Eric.
Just to add to the first question you asked about, Andrew, if Deputy Mayor Maria Torres Springer were here, she would talk to you about the housing vision plan that we released a few months ago. And one of the key factors in bringing housing, making it more affordable across the city, is building a little bit more housing in every neighborhood across the city. Because when you build a little bit more housing, it'll bring down the total cost across the entire city. So that's one of the things I would point you back to.
Me? Okay.
How are you?
How are you? Good. All right, thank you so much. Okay, as you mentioned about the migration crisis, and there is a report, many reports came that and you also blaming federal government. The report came that you tried to meet with our president, Joe Biden, many times, but it's not happened. What is the reason you think? And then talk about the Queens, where the capital of the South Asian and also the Hispanic people in Roosevelt Avenue, Jackson Heights area, where the both sidewalk is almost occupied by the illegal vendors, and a lot of crime happening. People who are paying the rent for the business they can do, and they are complaining again and again, but nothing happening. So this is the two questions.
Yeah, the first question was why you feel we have not received help on the migrant asylum?
And then you want to see president, but you can't, reach him.
Yeah, I met with the president several times on this issue. In 21, I think early 22, the dates, they get confused. Like I keep saying, when you're the mayor, you live dog years. Every day is, many years. It baffles me. New York City is the economic engine of the state and the country. And I don't have the answer. My role, as I did when I was a state senator, people came to visit me several times to get initiative passed. I have to keep hammering away at this issue. And I'm really pleased that we are now getting a chorus of other cities that are joining us, who are now part of our coalition. Back in April of last year, I was alone on this topic. But now you're seeing others are coming forward and saying, hold on, Eric is right. And they're joining us, and that coalition is going to continue to grow because these cities deserve better. And I'm not only talking about New York, Chicago, Los Angeles, El Paso, Brownsville, all of these cities, Houston, cities should not be handling national problems. And so I don't have the real understanding I'm hoping that our national leaders understand that and come a real immigration reform, a decompression strategy, pick up the price tag of this issue, and allow people to work. I sound like almost a broken record. It's the same thing. People should be allowed to work in this country. The illegal vending is something that is important to me, and we have to get it under control because brick and mortar businesses should not hurt. We should have enough vending licenses that are distributed so people should be able to vend. I think we need to get it right. And there is, I keep saying this, there is two schools of thought in this city. Like we put an initiative in place to clean up the Brooklyn Bridge. I don't know if you traveled past the Brooklyn Bridge. I think the Post rightfully did an analysis of what was happening on the Brooklyn Bridge. Councilwoman Brewer came and said, let the vendors stay. That is an unsafe environment there. So there's like this two school of thoughts that you're seeing in the city. You see the school of thought that police officers should be filling out documentations every time they stop people. There are those who say that no, police officers should do policing. People say that we should do what's happened with punitive segregation. There are those who feel one way, there's others who feel another. I think the majority of New Yorkers line up to we need a well-managed, peaceful, orderly city. It's unfortunate that a larger number of them have become apathetic to voting, that we're letting a numerical minority hijack the philosophies and the management of our cities. And I'm hoping that this is going to encourage New Yorkers to engage in politics more because some of these things that are passing through, people think they're attractive. I challenge you, go visit other cities that these initiatives have come in place. You need to go see other cities and you will realize my school of thinking of having a well-managed, organized city because of how diverse we are in practices. This city has to be maintained, and it has to be orderly. And having vending everywhere, having prostitution, people believe in legalizing prostitution. People believe in legalizing the use of letting people to shoot drugs in front of your home, sleeping in front of your home. New York can't run that way. This city's too complicated to have an any and everything go city. And that's my concern. And so we're gonna get the vending under control, but we're getting a lot of pushback from people who believe that you should be able to set up a table anywhere in the city and sell whatever you want, even if that brick and mortar business is selling the same thing. How are you? Same to you.
We had the 2 teens stabbed in Grand Central yesterday. I raised that to talk about subway crime, transit crime in general, but if you have an update that on, it'd be appreciated. You have these hard-fought gains on crime that you outlined at the top. How sustainable do you think they are amidst the backdrop of this continued onslaught of migrants that's costing money, canceled police classes? So bottom line, how sustainable are these crime gains that you identify as your top priority heading into 2024?
I think your question is so important because when I talk about the devastation impact of the migrant and asylum seekers, people only think about the volume of people that are coming in. There are byproducts to this. Cut in services, like we had to postpone the police class. Looking at some of the budgetary cuts. Of having a body of people, many young, who can't work. You don't even need an imagination to figure out that if you have someone 4 or 5 months and said you cannot work, you cannot feed your family, you cannot provide for yourself, what happens? Lack of opportunities, an idle mind, it's the devil's workshop, as they say. And so there are a lot of things that are feeding off of the migrant policy that, as I said a few months ago, we're going to start seeing the physical aspects of this crisis. We've done a good job of keeping that physical aspect away from New Yorkers, but the dam has burst. And so the police department has done an amazing job from Commissioner Sewell to now Commissioner Caban. They have deployed the resources. We have shifted. There's a lot of things we've done around resources that has not been done before. Let me give you 2 examples. After an incident, police stay on the incident too long. You'll see hundreds of cops after the incident is under control. You'll see hundreds of cops there just waiting there. We've now shifted to a policy where you keep in place the minimum amount of personnel there, and everyone else goes back to patrol. That has never been done before. That's a cultural shift in the police department. We had attempted suicide jumper the other day. We only had the SU that stayed there. We didn't have hundreds of police officers just waiting, looking up at the jumper. What's the role of that? The second is parades. We used to have thousands of cops assigned to parades that you did not need the personnel. So instead of having those cops assigned there, we've now shifted them back into high crime areas. We're utilizing our manpower smarter and better. We're using technologies like drones. You're seeing a smarter police department that's allowing us to do a better job with a smaller number, but that's not sustainable forever. We need to continue to bring in our police classes, and that's what we're going to do. Now, what hurts us is when you have a bill that states every action Officer Johnson carries out, he has to document it. If you're talking about just one person, then that's not a problem. But if Officer Johnson is looking for a missing person and he speaks to 20, 30 people, multiply that by 5 minutes. Officer Johnson is off patrol. So when we should be calling for more time for Officer Johnson to be on patrol, less time for spending overtime, we're doing just the opposite. And that's going to have a major impact. This bill that was passed is going to have a major impact on what is going to happen in our city. And so we've been successful. Transit crime is down over, I think, 2.3%. Ridership is up. People are back on the subway system. We're doing a good job in dealing with those who have severe mental health illness. And so the plans that we put in place, we see the success of those plans.
Just to follow up on my opening point, if you have an update, sir, because I don't see any of your public safety officials here with you on the high-profile Grand Central incident. Do you have an update on that?
Yeah, no. The Commissioner Caban is going to give me a briefing on that, exactly what happened. And anytime you have incidents in these high-profile locations, it sends the feeling of, people don't feel safe. And that's why we have to make sure we, zero in, make the arrest as soon as possible, and make sure we get those repeated offenders off our streets.
Sorry, Mona, go ahead.
Good morning, Mr.
Hey,
Mayor.
Mona, how are you?
I'm well, sir. So I have a question for Deputy Mayor Williams-Isom.
Yes.
Are there any updated numbers on the amount of asylum seekers who have actually applied for asylum, as well as those who have applied for work permits, especially those that are eligible under TPS? And what are the latest numbers of people in the city's care? And last but not least, are there still single adult male and female migrants in hotels? Or are they all out of hotels?
Okay, so let's start with the legal services. To date, we have filed over 23,537 applications. That's over almost 8,000 asylum applications, 9,400 work authorization applications, and TPS is 6,100 TPS applications. Was there something else on the legal front?
No, then the other was.
So just to let you also know, from what we're hearing from the White House, there's about 2,200 people who have actually gotten their work authorization approved. And so they are connecting with the State Department of Labor and our department here to see how to get people connected to work, because that's the next really, obviously the most important thing, Mona. The next is that all of singles have been moved out of hotels for a while now. I think there's sometimes when there's surge, you understand that we're in the middle of a surge right now. Let me start with the numbers. Last week, I think my notes say 3,800, but I think it was more like 4,000 people that we got last week, which is kind of insane when you think about what these numbers are. We've had over 161,000 people who have come to us for care. I think we're at 68,000 who are in our care right now. But also remember, at the same time, we have our indigenous New Yorkers who are here, who are homeless and in shelters also. The only time you would have a single person in a hotel would be if there's a reasonable accommodation that they need. We also sometimes have some elderly, non-asylum folks who are in hotel rooms. I think that was it, right? Okay.
And just think about that for a moment. 4,000 people came to our city last week. We have to food, house, clothe, educate. 4,000. A week before, I think it was 3,900. Almost 4,000 a week. 8,000 every 2 weeks. 16,000 a month. And so when I read, Dana, your piece in the Times, that you state that, we did like 90% of the people we took care of. 99 we took care of. And that we would probably got people out of the system faster if we would have done A, B, C, and D. That's the federal government's job. The federal government said to New York City, we're not going to do our job, you do our job. You take care of 4,000 people a week, Eric, you and your team. And so when people look back at this crisis, everyone is looking at us and said, no one did it better than you, New York. We're almost a victim of our success. They're using our model as the model. And we had to learn it on the job. It was like there was no blueprint for this. On the job, while buses were rolling in, Camille and Zach and Deputy Mayor Williams-Isom, we had to learn this while we were flying. We had to fuel while flying. And what's fascinating is that those who should have been helping us in government every step of the way just critiqued us Instead of saying, listen, man, this city's in a crisis. We got to all come together around this. They just spent every ounce of energy. Like Brad went to Washington. We came back from Washington, not saying I demand the federal government does something. He said, we're going to take away the emergency powers. When you got 4,000 people coming into your city in a week, you need emergency power. You got to make some quick calls. And so I think that if we took care of 99% of the people who came to this city, that's a darn good stat. 99% of 161,000 people. Many didn't even speak English. West African countries, South and Central America, China, Russian speaking, didn't even speak English. We had to navigate that. Many of them came through trauma from coming through the Darien Gap. We had to navigate their pain of coming through trauma. All of that, we took care of 99% of those who came to this city. We lived up to what we said we were as a city. And so we managed this crisis like no other city in this country would have been able to manage this crisis. And you don't see that. You know, I was really pleased to see that the New York Times acknowledged that we took care of 99% of the people who came here. You know, and I'm hoping others will start acknowledging what this team has done. History is going to be kind to this administration. When I finish my book, you know, you read what this administration has done under these circumstances, history's going to look back and say this was one heck of administration, managing this city out of this.
Mr. Mayor, Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas to you.
Thank you, sir. New year means new laws coming on the books in 2024.
Yes.
Aside from the increase in the minimum wage, what particular new legislation are you excited about that will have a significant impact on New Yorkers?
The minimum wage is a huge one. The trickling impact of the increase in minimum wage, it just moves people closer and closer to out of poverty. I think that was important. The law that we were able to get substantiated with our deliveristas, our delivery workers, very important. They did an admirable job during COVID while many people were shelter in place. They were putting their lives on the line, delivering food. Those are two that comes to mind for me. Do any of you have any that's come to mind to you?
Well, I think your focus is going to be on Albany. With the housing is going to be one of the big ones, and smoke shops.
Yes, we have to get Albany on the same page with us with housing, and we have to deal with smoke shops, cannabis. We need the enforcement power. I will clean up our crisis of cannabis in 30 days if they give me the enforcement power.
And then just on housing, also City of Yes housing opportunity here in New York City.
Yes, yep.
Hello, Mr. Mayor.
How are you?
Merry Christmas. Fine. Let me come back to the immigrants issue. What today, December 26th, what is the real status of the federal help that the city requests? If you are specific,
The would have helped.
yeah, that the city requested federal help.
Yeah.
Help. What happened?
I know they're now negotiating a few items, funding packages dealing with Ukraine, Israel, and there's supposed to be some money for the bordering states. From the last time I heard, I think it was 1.3 billion. That is just not enough. You know, we're looking at, you know, you all know the numbers: 5 billion this fiscal year, 7 billion over the next two, $12 billion. You know, and the last time 800 million was allocated, New York only got 30-something million on the first round, and so we need to be talking about real numbers that are impacting real New Yorkers. So I am not seeing the light at the end of the tunnel from the federal government. And I think we can't treat this as a policy. We have to treat it as an urgency, and I'm just not seeing that energy.
Hi, Mr. Mayor.
How are you?
Good, thank you. I wanted to follow up on something that you said about the migrants almost kind of seeming to reference that there might be some crime among migrants. I know there has been some reports about crime in migrant shelters. I was just wondering if you guys are keeping track of that. Have you seen that there has been an increase in uptick in crime among migrants? And then I was just wondering if you plan to veto those, the how many stops bill and then the solitary confinement bill.
So let me peel them back. The Chief LaPetrie and Commissioner Caban is doing an analysis always around crime. They will be able to give you the exact numbers on if there's an uptick in any particular area or group and how they analyze that. Chief LaPetrie and Commissioner Caban would do so. We're keeping a close eye on where exactly are there crime trends. They do always do that, and I want them. They're going to continue to do that. In the area of the two bills, we are really looking at all of our options on exactly what we could do and what we should do. I've made it clear that I'm concerned about both of them, and we're looking at our final options on how we're going to move forward.
Hey, Mr. Mayor, how you doing?
What's happening?
I wanted to ask about security concerns surrounding New Year's Eve. And I know the NYPD is going to be doing their briefing later on in the week, but I just wanted to ask, are there any sort of increased threat levels here? And I know that naturally, because it's New Year's Eve, because it's Times Square, the terror threat naturally rises. But is there anything new this year? Anything that gives any sort of concern? Any new strategies, more deployment of officers? Anything that you could say about what's going to be going on down there?
We're going to use technology a lot this year, number one. Number two, as you know, there's always a serious concern around safety in New Year's Eve because there's a large number of people. Everyone, look for events like this if they want to do bad things. And the police department is on top of it. There's an added concern because of some of the protests you have been seeing, and there was an attempt to disrupt the tree lighting, and we're sure that there's going to be some type of attempt this year to use that stage for some other concerns that people are having. The police department did an amazing job during the tree lighting to mitigate any form of major disruptions, and they're going to do it this year. And I just think last year, many people don't recall, in the midst of that, we had that assault on the two police officers, and the NYPD analyzed our response to that, and we're making sure that we don't use distractions to get in the way of staying on our posts, staying on our locations, and making sure that we not allow someone to pull us off. There's something that's known in policing, particularly when there's some type of terrorist action, of secondary devices and things like that. They want to draw attention from one area to go to a specific target area. We are really exercising our mental muscles to make sure that that does not happen. People have to maintain their locations and use minimum deployment from where a particular incident is happening, so that we do not allow people to take us off our goals. So there's some different strategies that we're going to put in place this year to take into account all of these circumstances. And as always, we're monitoring the chatter. We're monitoring the chatter out there so we could be prepared.
Is there anything to that chatter? I know you mentioned the protests, and that's certainly a concern. But any lone wolf, anything on this chatter, anything that's being picked up by anybody?
I wouldn't. If we did, we wouldn't. We wouldn't mention that. It's important for our intel division under Chief Weiner, Deputy Commissioner Weiner, to determine to let the police know so they could deploy correctly. But lone wolves are challenging. Like the individual, the perpetrator last year, he wasn't on anyone's radar. His assault on those two police officers, you have to be ready for those unpredictable circumstances. It's a real Herculean task to manage that number of people without being heavy-handed, but being protective.
Mr. Mayor, earlier this year, the NYPD entered into a settlement agreement on how it polices protests relating to...
I'm glad you asked that.
All right, from Black Lives Matter protests. Yep. After that settlement was reached, changing how the NYPD handles protests, now you see protests relating to the Israel Gaza war, including protesters, including people with some radical politics, shut it down, disrupt things. So with this new matrix on how NYPD polices protests, have you been reviewing the reports that are born out of these protests? And what do you think of the new protesting system the NYPD is operating under?
I'm glad you asked that question because that is what I keep saying about the two schools of thoughts and the byproduct of some of the changes that we've made. I did not agree of the concept of those changes. You know, I pushed back hard, and we're going to start to see the byproduct of those changes that were negotiated. The judge basically, said y'all need to come to an agreement. I don't believe that people should be able to just take over our streets and march in our streets. I don't believe people should be able to take over our bridges. I just don't believe you could run a city this complex where people can just do whatever they want. And the decision that came out of that agreement, I thought it put us on a very troubling direction. And now you're seeing it. When you see, 1,000 people go to Grand Central Station and decide that they want to just close down Grand Central Station, or they want to sit in the street in front of Times Square, we're seeing a byproduct of this.
You're saying the reason why that is happening is because the NYPD is operating under this new matrix of policing protests from the settlement, that is allowing people to, as you said, take over Grand Central Station. This is not something NYPD would have allowed to happen before the settlement.
Well, when you look at the agreement, the right to walk in the streets, the right to just basically, it's more lenient. The police department have to be extremely more hesitant in actions that they would have carried out in the past to keep the peace. And now what happens when people peacefully protest, it doesn't become a problem. But now we're seeing that some of the peaceful protests there are people who are being embedded in these protests. We had a person yesterday who started spray painting Starbucks, using hateful terminology, spray painting Starbucks, riling up the crowd. When police went in to take action, others started joining in. These are very volatile situations. So peaceful protesters, when you allow violent people to be embedded into peaceful protesters, it moves from a peaceful protest. We had to call a level 3 yesterday. That's a high-level mobilization when you have to call a level 3. And, we were able to only have 6 people arrested, great level of restraint, but you can't embolden those people who are watching what's playing out in New York City. People come from all over the country. A lot of our agitators are outside people who come from all over the country and embed themselves into peaceful protests to rile up the crowd. And so when you look at, since October 7th, we have 400 protests. And unlike in other municipalities, we've been able to monitor that. But you're seeing a small pocket of people who are now becoming part of the protest, who are really trying to rile up the crowd, and we cannot tolerate that, and we can't accept it.
If you had such issues,
483, wow, 483.
if you had such issues with the settlement terms, why did the city enter the settlement? Why not just fight it and keep the lawsuit going?
The signals we got was they were telling us that we could have had a worse of outcome if we didn't come to some type of settlement. That was the signals. As soon as I read the settlement, I said, this is a problem. This is a problem. And, you have to go by the advice of your attorneys, But as soon as I read it, anyone who policed this city should be concerned about what's in the settlement.
I should just add just one other thing on that. The settlement imposes a tiered system for responding to protests, so there's a lot that depends on the circumstances. It does not allow protesters to block access to critical infrastructure, and just want to be clear on that.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And of the 483 protests, NYPD estimates about over 161,000 participants participating over the last 2.5, 3 months, whatever it is. 161,000 plus. Now, obviously, a lot of those are probably the same people, but That's the number they estimate.
Yeah, we got 8.3 million people in the city. Out of there's you probably have the largest protest I saw was about 5,000. But when 5,000 people take to a street, it makes it challenging, and it gives the impression that 8.3 million New Yorkers are doing it, and it's not. Average person wants to get to and from his place of employment and provide for his or her family. But when people do things peacefully, it's fine. But all you need is a small pocket of people, like you saw yesterday, that can disrupt a peaceful protester. And they're there, they go for one reason at all, to disrupt.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, sir.
2 questions, please. First question, do you think by being blunt on the need for help from the federal government on this crisis, saying the president has failed New York, do you think your frankness on the issue might have made the White House officials a little less politically inclined to provide aid? And then my second question, Mr. Mayor, after a review of your 2025 campaign donations, Politico identified a 19-year-old donor listed on your campaign filings as having contributed $2,100. But when we contacted her, she repeatedly told us that she never made a donation and she wasn't involved, and her spokesperson said the same. And the spokesperson then later said her father, the owner of Marmara Hotels, his name is Kahan Gersel, that he donated the money under his daughter's name without her involvement. Do you know Mr. Gersel, and what do you think of donors telling us that they never donated at all, or that they donated under someone else's name?
Okay, first let me peel back the question. There were months that went by of calling for help before we raised the concern of how the administration handled it. And so I don't think my candidness should get in the way of anyone looking at what New York City was going through and the other municipalities and providing the help that we needed. And so I doubt anyone from the White House is saying, because Eric was candid on what he felt his city needed, that we're going to ignore them. And if we do a real analysis, if you look at the date and compare them, almost a year went by, And so New Yorkers expect a certain advocacy from their mayor. They're watching what is played out. And what I was seeing when we sit down with our team and we did our report, what I was seeing from my team was that this is going to get really bad. We got to bump up our advocacy. We were seeing what was coming to this city. And so I think that I would not have been an advocate for this city if I would have in any way ignored what we saw on the horizon. And when it comes down to donations, the rules are clear. And every donor, we tell every donor, here are the rules. Donate in only your own name. Donate according to the rules. I'm very clear on that. And I don't think that there's a campaign that has not probably had 1 or 2 people that didn't do such. But we're very clear. I had a great compliance system. We spent tens of thousands of dollars on compliance attorney to look over, to make sure that they're done right. So I'm very clear. Any donor we receive, you got to follow the rule, and that's what I tell all donors in doing so.
All right.
How are you?
Good to meet you. Keith Kelly with Howard Town, West Side Spirit. Once again, on congestion pricing, the head of the EMT unit yesterday said it's going to make recruiting difficult because you're imposing a $4,400 tax on first responders who will have to drive to work. I haven't heard from the fire department union or the police union, but I assume they have the same concerns that people who work and protect people in Lower Manhattan are now getting taxed. And I confess I have close relatives who have a vested interest. So that's one question. The other one is I think about 400,000 people live below 60th Street. Are they all going to be taxed every time they drive their car, from their house?
Well, the final rule is going to be put together. Well, Deputy Mayor Mayor Joe, she would talk about that. But you know, I've made it clear that we have to get it right. We can't be overburdensome on working class New Yorkers. This is new, so of course, this is New York City. This is new. There's going to be some yays, some nays. You know, this is part of when you institute something new. We have to clean up our environment. We have to deal with congestion, which is killing our economy because of how difficult it is to move around Manhattan. And so we must come up with the real solutions. And the beauty is you pivot and shift based on the outcomes, you know. So I'm excited about making sure we get this right and we don't hurt working class New Yorkers. DM, you want to add something to that?
Sure, and I want to echo what the mayor said. You know, this is a huge culture change for New York City, but a culture change for the better, as it is in every other major global city that's implemented congestion pricing. And as the mayor said, often years later, there are shifts because lessons learned as we adapt to the new normal, which absolutely must be if we're to really take a dent in the emissions production and transportation sector of our region. We're focused on really ensuring that school buses and yellow taxis are exempt. We're also, you know, continuing to have discussions with the MTA around government vehicles and how government operations continue. Emergency vehicles are specifically exempt, but there are, you know, categories of other government vehicles that are integral to our city service, and we'll continue to have those discussions with the MTA to ensure that there's nothing about the congestion pricing construct that undermines the city's ability to provide services.
What about residents who live in there? There's going to be any kind of code or thing, or they?
So there is some tax breaks in the law for residents that live within the district, but other than that, there was nothing in the TMBR recommendations that specifically spoke to residents within the district.
Time for two more, Nolan, go.
Merry Christmas.
How are you?
I'm all right.
Good.
If we could circle back to the migrant thing real fast.
Yes.
Why, if you don't think sort of the vocalness of your complaints is why the Biden administration has denied your repeated pleas for aid, why do you think they have?
I am baffled, you know, that why they're not seeing Washington on the whole. And oftentimes people talk about the Biden administration, but I'm critical of Congress as well. New York City, as I said, that we're the economic engine of this country and state. I don't believe any of these cities should be going through this. I don't have the answer, and I think that's the answer that we need to turn towards Washington. And that's why I talk about New York City residents, that we need to go visit our lawmakers there and say, you know, what's going on here? And we had this slow process of educating New York City residents because many people thought that Eric was in charge of the buses coming in, that Eric was in charge of deportation, that Eric was in charge of making sure that we house. We are operating within the law. And I believe that all New Yorkers should join us in saying this should not be happening in New York City. But I don't have the answer there.
Sort of the culture of the city is the mayor's responsible.
Yes.
Your argument is Washington's responsible. The polls seem to show voters aren't buying your argument. Why do you think that is?
Well, because when you really think about it, and I'm responsible for navigating us out of this. I want to be clear on that. I do not abdicate my responsibility as the mayor, no matter what the city's hit with. I'm responsible for navigating us out of it. These are the cards that I have been dealt, and I can't sit back and say, well, hey, if I had another card. No, these are my cards. And part of my role as the mayor is to keep pounding those who should be giving us the assistance that we deserve. And when you looked at this, the complexity of this, many New Yorkers didn't get it. I have communicated with some very intelligent New Yorkers. When I sat down and I have dinner or meet them on the subway or talk with them, they said, wait a minute, I didn't know that you can't stop the buses from coming in. I didn't know that because of some of the laws that we have in this city, that you don't have the authority to even deport people who are arrested 4 and 5 times. I didn't know that you can't do this or that. A lot of New Yorkers, if you go on the street and ask them, they don't have the answers to the questions. They don't know that our hands are tied. You show up at our Port Authority or through the JFK Airport, we have to provide them services. And the average New Yorker did not know that. And part of our job is to articulate to them so they can take the same anger I'm feeling and they can point it in a direction that is ought to.
I would also add, Mayor, to the point that the mayor made earlier, for the first year of this whole crisis, we did nothing but just ask for help and not say a word of, offer a word of criticism. And it's only after we started, being honest about the criticism is that when we started receiving allocations of funding and other resources. So.
Can I just do a friendly amendment? We didn't just ask for help. We managed the crisis at the time while we were asking for help.
Right.
We did both things. I just want everybody to know we didn't just sit back and say, can you help us? Can you help us? We build an asylum arrival center. We build a legal clinic. We are working on resettlement with other states. We're gathering other cities together. So all of that was happening at the same time, 3,000 people coming through the front door, and we advocated for more resources.
Right. If that wasn't the case, then the Times wouldn't have complimented us and said 99% of the job was perfect.
Oh, no. Go ahead.
Sorry, I was just gonna ask one more, Mr.
Yes.
Mayor. You talk about all the trips you've taken to Washington, D.C., and you acknowledge that you haven't gotten much back. Why should people think that the 13th to the 14th to the 15th trip yields a different result?
Yeah, and I think that's a legitimate question. And as I always said, that when I was in Albany, some of the legislation that we were able to accomplish, even the Kendra's law, the reduced speed limit law, a lot of these bills is like continuous sessions. It's unfortunate that lawmakers take a long time, a lot of advocacy, a lot of parents come up who are the victim of some of these incidents, family, love members, members that are part of the family, social setting. And it takes a while before lawmakers see the urgency that's playing out on the ground. And so Eric going alone has now turned into Eric going with other executives in other cities, and now we need to move to the next level of Eric going down with faith leaders that are seeing a byproduct of this, Eric going down with everyday New Yorkers that can speak to their electors. It's unfortunate, but our wheels of legislative movement is extremely slow, and under normal circumstances, you could wait a year or so or 2 years before a bill or law is passed. We're not in that place right now. We have to bump this up in 2024 because when you're getting 4,000 a week, 8,000 every 2 weeks, 16,000 a month, we got to kick in gear a little faster right now.
Merry Christmas.
How are you?
Good, thank you.
Good.
Now, when you look back for the 2 years, you have inherited the worst time in the history of New York as a mayor. And we can't compliment you more than we do. When we grew up, we all had a resolution at the end of the year for next year. What are your 3 resolutions for next year to make the city better?
These 2 years, legacies are not made from easy things. And anyone who has done an analysis of my life would tell you that, things don't come easy. But like I say, I know what hard is. Hard is raising 6 children on your own, moving out of Brownsville, Brooklyn, into a little small house and trying to figure out how you're going to keep the lights on. People used to think we were the luckiest people on the block, Mona, because we barbecued every day. They didn't know the gas was turned off, And so life prepares you for where you are. And I had a mommy that never gave up. And no matter how difficult it was, she just told, do the best you can. I wake up every day with one goal: do the best you can, Eric. And all of that, nothing would distract me from that. And so moving to next year, I need to make this city continue to drive down crime. I need to make sure we continue to run the city, even with the very serious budget cuts that we have to put in place. And I must navigate us through this migrant and asylum crisis. And the top resolution for this year is that I'm going to spend some more time with Jordan. We're not doing enough football games together. We're not having enough dinners together. And I just want to spend some more time with him because I've been doing this for so long that I have not had, son-dad time enough. And he keeps texting me, hey, Dad, let's catch a game. And I need to be more reciprocal on that. That's my top thing. I want to spend a heck of a lot more time with him.
Mr. Mayor, where's Tim Pearson?
Hold on. Wait. No, we're gonna do a few more. I keep telling you about stop yelling out like that. It's okay. We're gonna do a few more since I came in on the day after Christmas. Who'd you call? What's up, Ethan?
So, Mr. Mayor, going back to the solitary bill and the How Many Stops Act, I know
Yes.
you didn't say one way or the other if you're going to veto it yet, but Speaker Adams said she's ready to override any veto.
Mhm.
Considering earlier this year, Council overrode your veto on the city FEPS package,
Mhm.
is that factoring into your decision at all, the political implications of having another veto overridden by the council?
No. Listen, we have a great system of government, divided into our legislative and the executive. We don't want dictatorships in our country. The council has a role, I have a role, and our lawmakers have a role. If they determine that they want to pass a bill, override a bill, I need to advocate on what I believe. And then once the action is taken, then we execute to carry out what the action is. We follow the law. There's several things that are coming out of the council that I think that their hearts may be in the right place, but it's going to have long-term impact, like we were talking about with the protesters. It's going to have long-term impact. This is a complicated city where order is needed. And I think that sometimes the idealism collides with realism. You hear me say that all the time. And I just have a different philosophy on how you maintain law and order in the city. And some people think differently. And that's what makes the city what it is. They have a belief, I have a belief. And sometimes that belief collides. Like a perfect example is the Brooklyn Bridge. Gail Brewer believed people should be able to line up and down the bridge and sell whatever they want. I don't. I don't believe people should inject themselves with drugs sitting on your porch. I don't believe people should sleep on the streets in tents and, on your block. I can go down a list of things that we just have a philosophical difference in belief. I don't believe police should be spending time on every person they provide services to document it. Level 2 and 3 stops, they should. Level 1 stops, they shouldn't. So this is just a philosophical difference in belief. And I'm looking at my options, but I do not wake up and say, okay, they may override me. That doesn't impact my decisions at all.
Hi, Mayor Adams.
What's up, Kate?
I have just two questions. The first is on the HPD housing announcement. Is this in addition to mandatory inclusionary housing mandates, or is it to help fulfill those mandates? And my second question is, what is the update on Tim Pearson? I know there was some probe into him. Is he still handling security at the migrant shelters? Is he still visiting migrant shelters? And was there ever any video from that dispute? I know there was a difference in what my colleague reported happened based on what your office was saying happened, and I know actually the case against a guard was tossed out. So what's the latest on Tim Pearson?
The incident is still reviewed. They make a determination. Everybody has their responsibility. It's not my job to do those reviews. So Tim is still doing his job. He's a value asset, 9/11 survivor, a important entity in the New York City Police Department, a good public servant. And he's continued to add valuable information to what we need and in the cities during these tough times. Man, you better have a bench, and you better have people who have gone through some stuff to help us go through this stuff. And I have been really fortunate by having people who have gone through stuff, and Tim is one of them. Tim, Phil, and the people who are up here right now, their personal experiences, they're just really helping me, go through some stuff. I was talking to Camille, Ingrid, and Sheena this morning as I was weighing some decisions, and just the value of their personal experiences is like, man, if you don't have Knights of the Round Table, you in trouble, and Tim is one of them. Tim is one of my Knights of the Round Table. I've seen him for over almost 40 years now navigate challenging times, and the reviewers would make a determination, and I thank God, and I think the city is fortunate for having him. Now, House, who knows that? We don't have Deputy Mayor Maria Torres Springer. She'll get back to you on that. She's still unwrapping her gifts. Yeah.
Thanks. On housing, you suggested that you're open to both Good Cause and 421, some sort of package that incorporates 421A and Good Cause in Albany. Like, how real do you think that is? Do you foresee sort of pushing real estate at all to accept that sort of thing?
No, I'm not open to both. I'm open to a housing solution. That's what I'm open to. I'm open to a housing solution. We went through Albany last year with nothing on housing. Everyone tells, if you speak with all those lawmakers up there, they'll all tell you that housing is one of our top issues. Some say one, some say two, but everyone states that. So how could we have gone through the last legislative session with nothing on housing? That can't happen this year. We need to come to a resolution. And if part of that resolution is to sit down and come up with tenant protections, I'm open to that conversation because I believe in tenant protections. It's not like I'm against tenant protection. And so the terminology, sometimes I think people get caught up in the terminology. Like people are caught up in the terminology of 421A. Just the mere sound of it, people are turned off. People are caught up in the terminology of good cause. So we have to move away from the terminologies and say, what are the goals? The goals is a centralized building. The goal is to make sure we have some form of tenant protections. And I think that reasonable adults can sit down in a room and say, how do we accomplish them both? And that has been my conversation with everyone.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Merry Christmas.
Same to you.
Had a couple of questions. I'll start with the one on SNAP, cash assistance benefits. As you probably remember, last week Legal Aid filed a contempt motion. In response to that, HRA and the deputy mayor was pointing out that the city is doing the best that it can during a time of very high demand and a lot of staff shortages. One thing that was in the contempt motion, though, was that your administration didn't furnish any data at all on processing rates until September 2023, even though you're supposed to do it every 3 months. In addition, there's actually no data provided, according to Legal Aid, on something called immediate needs grant. So I'm just wondering, but why is that data not being provided, even though it's mandated by law? The other part, me and my colleague Michael Gartland last week reported on Frank Rowan and some companies that he had co-founded. They were accused in a civil federal lawsuit of participating in a money laundering scheme. Wondering if those allegations are making you have any pause about putting Frank in a high-ranking role in your re-election effort.
If I do the Frank piece, are you going to do the?
You want me to start?
No, I like because I always like talking to Chris. So.
Okay. Go ahead.
We should do a sit-down interview.
Why don't we arrange that?
It will be considered.
Happy New Year.
In civil lawsuits, people hurl accusations at each other. And Frank, as his counsel, he's not part of this staff. I think that you should reach out to his team, and then they could answer that. That has nothing to do with this administration. But people hurl things at them in civil lawsuits, and we see that often. But his team could respond to that.
In terms of your campaign, though, is he going to still play a leading role on it?
Yes. Frank has been a supporter, and when he served as chief of staff, he has been a good advisor, and I look forward to his assistance in the years to come.
Yeah,
Deputy Mayor?
I will end there. I think I said it last time, providing New Yorkers with the assistance that they need is a top priority for us. And I don't think I did tell you this statistic, Chris, that despite FY23 marking the highest volume of cash assistance applications in at least well over 2 decades, which I didn't realize it was that high. We came in with a very high need with a pandemic, and we continue to see it growing. We still have been making a lot of progress on the backlog, and we're committed to getting the information. When you're talking about the processing rates, let me check with the team on that, because I don't have that down. And it was the processing rates and what was the other one?
Well, it's under that 2005 court order.
Right.
The city, HRA specifically, is
Yep.
supposed to furnish something they call quarterly data.
Yep, and what it's just surprising to me, because we've been working very closely with all of those key stakeholders as we are figuring out how we get the backlog down and how we make the changes, whether it's technological changes, whether it's doing things like applications on the telephone, hiring over 700 people, not having that group of people have to deal with the hiring freeze. We've been doing all of those things in order to get the backlog down. We are almost at functional zero on the SNAP, and we think that we're going to be in a very good place at the end of March on the emergency assistance. So I will give you that data, but we are really not just saying it, but doing it, given the really high backlog and where we see ourselves right now on the needs that New Yorkers.
Really a clear answer on why that data hasn't been provided quarterly.
So I wouldn't say there's not a clear answer. We have been working really closely with the courts on how we can provide that data and what we should be doing. So let me get back to you on the specific data that you're asking for.
And if we, I mean, we have an obligation, and if we in any way did not do that, we're going to find out why. And try to comply as quickly as possible. And let's be clear that our goal is to make sure that data is released. We do not deny the fact that we have a real manpower issue, particularly with the hiring freeze, and there's a real backlog, as the deputy mayor stated, in several decades. So listen, we know there's some challenges, and we want to get cash assistance in the hands of people. But we'll find out exactly what the answer is, and we'll tell you the answer. And if we're wrong, we're wrong. I'm perfectly imperfect. We're gonna try the best we can. I wake up every day doing the best I can and more. And there's no way there are not days that we don't drop the ball. We all do it. Like you dropped the ball the other day when you wrote that story that said that we're not allowing the press in the building. You dropped the ball. That was not your best story that you have ever written. And so it's all right when you drop the ball, because I still love you anyway. And
TV, you're watching the package, New York One, as soon as you're out, you're following what we do.
All right, thanks all.
Is this still your Aaron Judge year? Look at the numbers. This has been an Aaron Judge year. Look at what we have done. Our W's. You got to get our W's. Dark.
He has it. He just chose not to.
This is an Aaron Judge year, as I promised. Some real victories, some real numbers.